Greetings and welcome to the Virginia Hospital and Healthcare Association's Patients Come First podcast series. Podcast episodes are available on VHHA.com and on popular podcast hosting apps, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, and many others. Episodes of the podcast also air each Saturday at noon and Sunday at 10 a.m. on 100.5 FM, 92.7 FM, and 820 a.m. across Central Virginia. Please send any questions, comments, or feedback to pcfpodcast@vhha.com. Again, that is pcfpodcast@vhha.com. And today we're excited to be joined by Jonathan Moore, a music therapist who plays music at Chesapeake Regional Medical Center to help soothe patients and hospital guests. Moore is also a former member of the U.S. Navy Band. Today we'll talk about his career and his music, but first, welcome to the program, sir.
Good morning, Julian, and thank you for having me.
Well, we appreciate you being with us today. So to start with, if you would just tell us what initially drew you to music and when you began playing and how things have progressed for you since then as a performer.
I'll just start back when I attended school at Michigan State University. My degree was in music therapy and piano pedagogy. I also always worked in hospitals. I was like an orthopedic cast technician. That's someone that puts on orthopedic appliances and cast. And I did that while I attended college and for about 4 years after graduation. After I graduated from college and that, I spent 20 years as a keyboard and pianist with the Navy Band, and my duty stations included Orlando, Pearl Harbor, Norfolk, and Newport, Rhode Island. After I retired from the military, I was hired by Chesapeake Regional Healthcare, and for the past 15 years, I've been a pianist and music therapist for them. I'm also still work as a private pianist and a music instructor, and I'm also the music director for the Navy Chapel's First Landing.
Well, thanks for taking us down that path. I will say, just as a personal aside, I once lived in Michigan in Grand Rapids, and I will say I am partial to the University of Michigan, but I did have a cousin who played offensive line for Michigan State and for Sparty, so we won't hold that against you.
Thank you.
Other than piano and keyboard, do you play any other instruments?
I do not. That keeps me pretty busy.
Okay, fantastic. And we mentioned your time in the Navy, and you told us about your many duty stations. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Navy Band and what that experience was like?
Well, playing for the band was quite wonderful because you were part of something that was larger than yourself. You were playing for ceremonies, change of commands, retirements, cocktail parties, recruitment tours, and very rich in tradition and patriotism, and a lot of wonderful stories I have about the military. I always remember playing colors, which is raising the flag, and we got to do that every Tuesday morning at Pearl Harbor over the U.S., Arizona.
I want to talk now about your work as a music therapist at Chesapeake Regional. The world has fundamentally shifted in the past year due to the COVID pandemic, and hospitals are certainly no exception. They've implemented new safety and sanitation rules to protect patients and staff. I wonder, with those changes, those new protocols in place, how that has impacted your work as a music therapist and perhaps how you've had to adjust or shift the way you do things.
Well, the first thing that's challenging for all of us is we have to maintain a distance and wear a mask. So normally people are able to come up close to me at the piano and maybe hum along while I'm playing. But now I have to kind of keep a safe distance, protect them, and of course to protect me. And of course it's a little bit harder communicating with someone when they have a mask on, but we do the best we can. So I find that challenging because you always like to, when you interact with someone, you like to see their face. So I think that's kind of hard on us all.
And I wonder what your thoughts are about the soothing or healing properties of music. Having worked as a music therapist, you said now for about 15 years, I believe, at Chesapeake. In your observation, what do guests or patients derive from that? What are the benefits for them?
Well, I did think about 4 things that I mainly do in the lobby while I'm playing. And the first thing was like when I play songs, and people are there waiting for test results, sitting there just waiting for loved ones to have their surgical procedure. And when I play songs, it sometimes triggers memories for them. So they'll come up, and I have a story of a lady that came up, and you can say this is coincidence or someone guiding you, but she said, "You just played my mother's favorite song." And she started crying. And of course, I didn't know it was her mother's song. I was just picked a song out of the hat to play. But it really touched her heart, and that meant a lot to her.
Well, if you don't mind, I know you have your keyboard with you. Would you mind playing a riff or a few bars from that song? We don't know what that song is, but that's an interesting story.
I'll play something relaxing, and I hope it comes through.
Okay. That did come through great. Thank you for doing that. It was very
you're welcome.
Very soothing. So, listen, I appreciate that. And with that out of the way, now that we've talked about your work, I want to give our listeners a bit of a sense of who you are beyond that work. And so we've got a couple fun personal questions for you, Jonathan. The first is, and this is an entirely imaginary premise, but in the hypothetical scenario that you could anticipate your final day on Earth, what would your last meal be?
That's an interesting question. You totally caught me off guard with that one. But my wife makes a sensational pot roast and mashed potatoes, and I would go with that and a glass of red wine.
That sounds like a good meal, that's for sure. And finally, a question we ask all of our guests on the Patients Come First podcast. Jonathan, if you were stranded on a deserted island, what one book, one album, and one movie would you take with you to keep yourself company? We will spot you a copy of the religious text of your choice. So other than that, what are your 3 entertainment survival kit picks?
Well, I guess the book would have to be the Bible. The movie, I would probably wouldn't want it. I would rather have a piano on this desert island than any other kind of entertainment.
Okay, you can sub that out. We'll grant you that.
So I would sub that. And what was the other thing I got to choose?
Album would be the third one.
An album. I'm glad you asked that, because I think about repertoire a lot, and everyone always asks me, they say, Johnny, what's your favorite song? And I'm like, well, I've narrowed it down to about 100, and that's just in the jazz idiom. Then I have another 100 favorite for rock and things like that. So to have one album, that could drive me crazy trying to figure that out. But so I didn't really have a good answer for you on that, did I?
That's okay. Okay. And listen, there are so many great genres of music and so much out there, so you can certainly appreciate that. Well, listen, with that is going to bring us to the close of another episode of the Virginia Hospital and Healthcare Association's Patients Come First podcast. If you like what you heard, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast and subscribe so that you know when new episodes are available. And we want to once again thank our guest, Jonathan Moore, a music therapist at Chesapeake Regional Medical Center, for being with us today. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.